Hi students, welcome to lessons 8 Research Methods of Sociology Part B. Primary and secondary research. Primary and secondary research. Primary research is also called field research. According to Grattan and Jones, primary research refers to research that has involved the collection of original data specific to a particular research project, for example, through using research methods such as questionnaires or interviews. Secondary research is also called desk research. In this type of research, the researcher will not only collect any primary data and rely on existing sources of data. Marketing research reports, census, company websites, news reports, magazine articles are some of the sources of secondary data. Secondary research is usually carried out at home or library with the help of both the internet and printed materials. Idiographic and nomothetic. Idiographic and nomothetic methods represent two different approaches to understanding social life. An idiographic method focuses on individual cases or events. It involves trying to uncover a great deal of detailed information about a narrower subject of study. A nomothetic method, on the other hand, seeks to produce general statements that account for larger social patterns which form the context of single events, individual behaviors and experience. Sociologists who practice nomothetic research are likely to work with large survey data sets or other forms of statistical data and to conduct quantitative statistical analysis as their method of study. The nomothetic approach involves trying to make generalizations about the world and understand large-scale social patterns. Sociologists can combine both idiographic and nomothetic approaches to develop a more comprehensive understanding of society. 19th century German philosopher Wilhelm Windelband, a neo-Kantian, introduced these terms and defined their distinctions. Windelband used nomothetic to describe an approach to producing knowledge that seeks to make large-scale generalizations. This approach is common in the natural sciences and is considered by many to be the true paradigm and goal of the scientific approach. With a nomothetic approach, one conducts careful and systemic observation and experimentation to derive results that can be applied more broadly outside the realm of study. Sociologists study the relationships between people and society both at micro and macro level. People and their everyday interactions and experiences make up the micro. The macro consists of the larger patterns, trends and social structures that make up society. In this sense, the idiographic approach often focuses on the micro, while the nomothetic approach is used to understand the macro. Quantitative research. Quantitative research usually involves collecting and converting data into numerical form so that statistical calculations can be made and conclusions drawn. Researchers will have one or more hypotheses. There are research questions to be addressed, including predictions about possible relationships between variables. In order to find answers to these questions, the researchers will also have various instruments and materials, for example, paper or computer tests, observation checklists, etc., and a clearly defined plan of action. Data is collected by various means following a strict procedure and prepared for statistical analysis. Presently, statistical computer packages are also being used. The analysis enables the researchers to determine to what extent there is a relationship between two or more variables. Statistical analysis permits researchers to discover complex causal relationships and to determine to what extent one variable influences another. Objectivity is very important in quantitative research. Consequently, researchers take great care to avoid their own values or attitude affecting the results. They also critically examine their methods and conclusions for any possible bias. The main emphasis of quantitative research is on deductive reasoning, which tends to move from the general to the specific. This is sometimes referred to as a top-down approach. The validity of conclusions is shown to be dependent on one or more premises, prior statements, findings, or conditions being valid. Qualitative research. Qualitative research is the approach which emphasizes the socially constructed nature of reality. It is about recording, analyzing, and attempting to uncover the deeper meaning and significance of human behavior and experience, including contradictory beliefs, behaviors, and emotions. Researchers are interested in gaining a rich and complex understanding of people's experience and not in obtaining information which can be generalized to other larger groups. The approach adopted by qualitative researchers tends to be inductive, which means that they develop a theory or look for pattern of meaning on the basis of the data that they have collected. This involves a move from the specific to the general and is sometimes called a bottom-up approach. Data is collected in textual form on the basis of observation and interaction with the participants, that is, through participant observation, in-depth interviews, and focus groups. It is not converted into numerical form and is not statistically analyzed. Data collection may be carried out in several stages rather than once and for all. Researchers will tend to use methods which give participants a certain degree of freedom and permit spontaneity rather than forcing them to select from a set of predetermined responses of which none might be appropriate or accurately describe the participants' thoughts, feelings, attitudes, or behavior, and to try to create the right atmosphere to enable people to express themselves. Qualitative research adopts a less formal and less rigid approach than that used in quantitative research. In some studies, qualitative and quantitative methods are used simultaneously. Deductive and inductive approaches to research. Deductive method works from the more general to the more specific. Inductive method works the other way, moving from specific observations to broader generalizations and theories. According to Grattan and Jones, deductive approach involves testing of a predetermined theory, explanation, or hypothesis. This approach helps researchers establish a hypothesis by using existing theories. Deductive research is focused method of testing hypothesis. However, some critics would argue that this approach does not encourage divergent thinking. It may also limit the scope of creativities. According to Grattan and Jones, inductive approach generates the explanation from the data collected. It is the opposite of deductive research. It aims at exploring a new theory. It is about moving from specific observations to broader generalizations and theories. Inductive approach is flexible as the researcher does not have to follow any predetermined information. However, critics would argue that if observations are incorrect, the researcher would end up in incorrect conclusions. There are some differences between deductive and inductive approaches to research. In deductive approach, the researcher begins the process by considering past and present theories concerning the topic of the research. This helps the researcher develop some hypothesis. The new hypothesis will then be tested by the researcher in the process of conducting a new study. The collected data will either confirm or reject the hypothesis. On the other hand, relevant theories are not considered at the beginning of an inductive research. In this approach, clusters of data or patterns start emerging from the observations or measures conducted by the researcher. From these patterns, the researcher begins to generate new themes. It should be noted that deductive approach is usually adopted by researchers conducting quantitative research, while inductive approach is usually adopted by researchers conducting qualitative research. The ideal type method. The ideal type method of investigating social phenomenon has been illustrated by Max Weber, George Simmel and Durkheim. According to this method, an ideal is constructed from concrete cases and then a particular case is evaluated according to the degree of its approximation to the ideal. For example, if a sociologist is interested in a problem, say of marriage or democracy, he will create an ideal conception of marriage or democracy on the basis of concrete cases, and then he will measure the particular case of marriage or the working of democracy in a particular country to that ideal and ascertain its value accordingly. According to Weber, ideal type analysis and scales of personal values have proved very valuable for descriptive and analytical studies. This method can be used as a means of interpreting particular situations. Ideal method is also used to detect the causal force of other factors. However, the major challenge is the construction of an ideal type. It is a subjective process. Influence of personal preference cannot be ruled out in constructing an ideal. The ideal type is liable to change with the change in situations. Moreover, ideal type is not adequate to understand the complexity of society. Sociometry. The method was at first initiated by Jacob L. Moreno, Romanian American psychiatrist, psychosociologist and educator, the founder of psychodrama. Though it was primarily and chiefly used by psychologists, but its value in the study of sociological problems is now being gradually recognized. Sociometry is a set of techniques to measure in quantitative and diagrammatic terms attractions and repulsions in interpersonal relations. The approach has been very useful in the study of small group structures, personality trait and social status. It discloses the feelings people have for one another and provides various indexes or measures of interaction. Sociometry is the measurement of social choice, meaning the decisions, both conscious and unconscious, that are made regarding interpersonal affiliation. These measurement tools can be used to facilitate change. At its most basic level, sociometry addresses the various aspects of human connection. We are constantly making choices about with whom we choose to affiliate. Sociometry is a method that can be used to concretize and explore these choices. The sociometric test can be very helpful in the assignment of personnel to work groups in such a way as to achieve a maximum of interpersonal harmony and a minimum of interpersonal friction. This technique is in a sense a combination of ideal type analysis and statistics. This method is simple and reliable. However, it measures only one aspect of interpersonal attitudes and is not quantified. Social surveys. A survey is defined as a research method used for collecting data from a predefined group of respondents to gain information and insights on various topics of interest. Surveys have a variety of purposes and can be carried out in many ways depending on the research theme and methodology chosen and the objectives to be achieved. The data is usually obtained through the use of standardized procedures whose purpose is to ensure that each respondent is able to answer the questions to the best of his ability without bias. A survey involves asking people for information through a questionnaire which can be distributed on paper. Although with the arrival of new technologies, it is more common to distribute them using digital media such as social networks, email, quick response codes that is matrix barcode, or URLs that is uniform resource locator means a web address. The other methods like interview schedule can also be used. A survey may be undertaken with the primary purpose of formulating a program for the betterment of the conditions of life and work of a community or a group. The purpose of a social survey may also be to provide scientifically gathered facts. These surveys are very useful in providing detailed explanations of the socio-economic facts, explore social problems and policy making. The public opinion poll method. This method is used to seek and gauge the beliefs, sentiments and attitudes of the public on any given proposition. Public poll is sought where data regarding public opinion about various social, economic and political situations are collected through this instrument very frequently. The results of public poll help the authorities concerned in policy formulation and implementation. the 𝗧-𝗦𝗔𝗧 approach. This method for study of social phenomena has been advocated by Max Weber. 𝗧-𝗦𝗔𝗧 is a German word which means understanding or comprehension of sociological problems. The advocates of this method maintain that the observed facts are of little significance unless they are evaluated through discovery of their inner meaning. The American sociologist Charles Horton Cooley says in his Sociological Theory and Social Research 1940 that in order to grasp the significance of behavior of individuals, the researcher must understand the thought processes and sentiments and shares their states of mind. It is only then that the actions of the individuals can be best understood. This method should be utilized along with the scientific or empirical method for best results. Functionalism or structural functional method. Functionalism refers to the study of social phenomena from the point of view of the functions that particular institutions such as family, class, political institutions, religion, etc. serve in a society. The functional approach was employed by sociologists like Auguste Comte, Herbert Spencer and others, and anthropologists like Bronislaw Malinowski and Radcliffe Brown. It is a functional analysis of the different parts of society. According to R.K. Merton, American sociologist, it depends upon a triple alliance between theory, method and data. Function is the contribution which a partial activity makes to the total activity of which it is a part. The functional method assumes that the total social system of society is made up of parts which are interrelated and interdependent, each performing a function necessary to the life of the group, and these parts can best be understood in terms of the functions that they perform or in terms of the needs they meet. And since they are interdependent, we can understand them only by investigating their relationship to other parts as well as to the whole social system. Sociology uses different methods by which sociological facts can be collected, analyzed and put into proper form and certain conclusions drawn from them. As the social phenomenon is very complex and the data to be collected are very large, it is difficult to suggest which particular method should be employed by sociology. The sociologists have therefore been employing various methods for investigating social phenomenon. The important methods used in sociology are historical method, comparative method, statistical method, case study, primary and secondary method, inductive and deductive method, quantitative and qualitative method, questionnaire, interview method, observation method, experimental method, social survey, etc.